Hey everyone, and welcome back. You know how much we love a good corporate drama around here, and you won't believe the story we're diving into today. Buckle up as we unpack Nissan's history, their roller coaster relationship with Renault, and the wild ride they've been on in the current auto market.
Yeah,
Nah,
it's a fascinating story. And it all started with a request from you to learn more about Nissan,
right. And to make things even more interesting, we're using a Spanish language analysis video as our guide for this deep dive.
which just goes to show that investment analyses can be surprisingly captivating when you have the right story.
Exactly. And Nissan's story is full of twists and turns. Did you know that at one point, this global giant was on the verge of bankruptcy?
Yeah, it's hard to believe considering where they were just a few decades ago. In the late 20th century, Nissan was a powerhouse.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock. What were some of the key factors that contributed to their early success?
Well, they had a truly global presence. Manufacturing plants all over the world, Japan, the US, Mexico, Brazil, everywhere. They were producing popular cars, even launched their own luxury brand, Infiniti, in the late 80s.
Infinity, that's right. They were on a roll.
They were?
So what happened? How did this global giant end up on the brink of collapse?
The 1990s hit them hard.
What changed?
Well, for one thing, competition in the auto industry was heating up. Some of their new models weren't really resonating with consumers.
Jet designs weren't as appealing.
Yeah, they kind of missed the mark on a few key trends, and they were slow to adapt to the SUV craze, particularly in the US.
The SUV craze. That was a game changer for the whole industry.
It was huge. And to make matters worse, Nissan had accumulated a significant amount of debt.
So if they're facing increased competition, design misses, missing out on major trends.
By 1999, they were staring down the barrel of bankruptcy.
Wow, talk about a fall from grace. So what happened? Did they go under?
That's where things took a turn, a very unexpected turn. Enter Renault, a French automaker. They swooped in with a $5.4 billion lifeline.
Wow, a $5.4 billion lifeline. That's quite a rescue.
It was.
But why would Renault do that? I mean, was it just a generous act of corporate kindness?
Well, not exactly. It was a strategic alliance.
A strategic alliance. What does that mean in the context of the auto industry?
It's about joining forces to become more competitive, pooling resources, sharing technology, even platforms and manufacturing facilities.
So a marriage of convenience, but one that was critical for Nissan's survival.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, what were the specifics of this alliance? Did they literally share designs and factories?
They did.
Mm.
Take the Nissan Micra, for example. That model was built on a platform developed jointly with Renault.
Interesting.
This allowed them to save huge amounts of money on research and development, which is a massive expense in the auto industry.
So shared platforms reduced costs. It
Yeah.
makes sense. But turning around a company on the brink is about more than just efficiency, right? Who did they bring in to steer the ship?
That's where our story gets even more interesting, because it involves one of the most intriguing and controversial figures in recent business history, Carlos Ghosn.
Carlos goes, I've heard that name. Wasn't he hailed as some kind of corporate miracle worker?
He was.
Huh.
Ghosn became the CEO of Nissan in 1999, and his mission was to essentially resurrect the company.
Okay, so what did this dramatic restructuring plan look like? We're talking about a company deeply in debt, facing a rapidly changing market.
It wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of strategic moves, and some of them were pretty controversial. For example, he closed down 5 Nissan factories in Japan. This move sparked protests from workers and communities that depended on those factories.
That's understandable. Those are tough decisions.
They were. But Ghosn argued that they were necessary to streamline operations and cut costs. He also made the difficult decision to lay off 21,000 employees.
Wow.
Again, a painful but necessary step to reduce overhead and make the company more competitive.
So he's cutting costs, consolidating operations, but they also needed to address those missed opportunities like the SUV boom we talked about.
Absolutely. Ghosn recognized that Nissan needed to adapt to changing consumer preferences, particularly in the U.S. market. He shifted the company's focus towards developing more SUVs and trucks.
Which were in high demand at the time.
Exactly. And that strategic realignment proved to be crucial in turning around their fortunes.
That's quite a turnaround story.
It really is remarkable.
Did Ghosn's plan actually work?
It did, and remarkably fast. Within just 1 year of taking the helm, Ghosn brought Nissan back to profitability.
Yeah.
It went from a $6 billion loss to a $2.7 billion profit before taxes.
That's incredible. From the brink of collapse to a $2.7 billion profit in just 1 year.
It was a stunning turnaround, and it solidified Ghosn's reputation as a corporate turnaround artist.
He became a business legend.
He did. And this success wasn't just a flash in the pan. The Renault-Nissan alliance, with Gosen at the helm, continued to flourish. They even brought Mitsubishi on board a few years later.
Wow, so they were really expanding their reach.
They were on a roll.
Okay, so they've got this ambitious CEO, a growing alliance, and a taste of success. You can practically hear the celebratory champagne popping. But this is the deep dive, and I have a feeling the story doesn't end there.
You're right, there's a twist coming. Just when things seem to be going swimmingly for Gosen and Nissan, the story takes a turn you won't believe. In 2018, Carlos Ghosn was arrested in Japan.
Arrested. What were the accusations?
It was a massive scandal that sent shockwaves through the business world. Ghosn was accused of underreporting his income to the tune of millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars.
Millions. The Japanese authorities also alleged that he had misused company funds for personal gain, including lavish expenses and questionable investments.
Wow, so the corporate hero falls from grace. What did Nissan do in response to these allegations?
They acted swiftly. Nissan launched their own internal investigation, which ultimately corroborated many of the accusations made by the Japanese authorities.
So they found evidence to support the claims against him.
They did. Gosen was ousted from the company, stripped of his titles, and placed under house arrest in Tokyo while awaiting trial.
What a dramatic turn of events. Okay, so Gosen is out, Nissan is reeling from the scandal, and I'm guessing this whole situation probably didn't exactly inspire confidence in their investors.
It was definitely a blow to their reputation. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about Gosen. The scandal unfolded at a time when Nissan was already grappling with some pretty significant challenges in a rapidly changing global auto market.
So the Gosen saga was a major disruption, but perhaps not the only factor in Nissan's shifting fortunes. What other challenges were bubbling to the surface at this time?
Well, remember how we talked about those strategic alliances being so crucial for navigating the global market? Well, the landscape was changing, and Nissan was facing a new kind of competitor.
You're talking about the rise of Chinese automakers, right? I remember that's a key takeaway from this analysis video we're using for this deep dive. You're talking about the rise of Chinese automakers, right? I remember that's a key takeaway from this analysis video we're using for this deep dive.
Exactly. Chinese automakers were no longer just playing catch-up. They were becoming major players on the global stage. They were offering innovative cars with competitive technology and at price points that were really putting pressure on established brands like Nissan.
It's interesting the analysis we're using specifically calls out the price war happening in the Chinese market as intense and crazy. What kind of impact does that have on a company trying to compete in that environment?
It's incredibly challenging. Think about it. Chinese consumers have more choices than ever before. And these domestic brands aren't just competing on price. They're coming in with sleek designs and the latest technology. It's forcing Nissan, and really all the traditional automakers, to rethink their entire approach to that market.
It's like they need to prove themselves all over again. On top of that, didn't Nissan have another challenge around this time? Weren't they a little slow to adapt to the electric vehicle revolution?
That's right. While companies like Tesla were rapidly gaining market share with their electric vehicles, Nissan was lagging behind. They eventually launched the Leaf, which was a decent electric car, but it faced stiff competition from the get-go.
So they're facing pressure from these new competitors in China, playing catch-up in the EV market, all while still dealing with the fallout from the Gosen scandal. Did the Renault-Nissan alliance survive all of this?
It did survive, but the relationship definitely transformed. Remember how we talked about it as a marriage of convenience? Well, by 2023, that marriage had essentially become a separation, though they remained business partners.
A corporate breakup. What did that look like in real terms?
Essentially, Renault reduced its stake in Nissan, and the two companies agreed to operate more independently. It was a recognition that they both faced unique challenges and needed the flexibility to chart their own courses.
Okay, so no more merger magic to rely on. What's the outlook for Nissan as we record this in late 2024?
It's a mixed bag. On the one hand, they're still a major global automaker, but their sales have been declining, their profit margins are slim, and the uncertain global economic outlook has a lot of analysts worried.
Yeah, you have to imagine that a potential recession in the U.S. plus the cooling Chinese market, those are major factors for a company like Nissan that's so globally integrated.
Absolutely. And despite these challenges, Nissan have been rewarding its investors with dividends and stock buybacks.
That seems counterintuitive. If things are so uncertain, why try to appease investors with payouts? Wouldn't it make more sense to invest that money back into the company, especially in things like EV development?
It's a fair question, And there are a few different interpretations of this strategy. Some analysts see it as a way to try and boost their share price, which has been slumping. Others view it as a way to return excess cash to shareholders instead of making big, risky investments in a volatile market.
So it's a gamble either way. Invest in the future or try to satisfy investors in the short term. It sounds like Nissan has some big decisions to make. What are your final thoughts on Nissan's ability to navigate these choppy waters?
They certainly have their work cut out for them. To thrive in this new landscape, they'll need to double down on innovation, adapt to the evolving demands of consumers, especially when it comes to electric vehicles, and maybe even be willing to take some risks. The auto industry is in a period of rapid transformation, and only time will tell which companies will emerge as leaders.
This deep dive has taken us on quite a journey. From near bankruptcy to a global alliance, a high-profile corporate scandal, and now this uncertain future. Nissan's story is a reminder that in the business world, nothing stays the same forever. And as we've seen, it's not just about Nissan. Their story shines a light on the challenges faced by all traditional automakers as they grapple with the rise of Chinese competitors in the electric vehicle revolution. What do you think? Are traditional car companies equipped to compete in this new world? That's something for you to ponder. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another fascinating story from the world of business. Until then, stay curious.